Now I'm reading from the Aion Lectures by Dr. Edward Edinger, exploring the self in C.G. Jung's Aion. This is the portion of the lecture related to paragraphs 99 to 104. Next in this consideration of the relationship of good and evil is the pseudo-Clementine text which Jung quotes. The so-called pseudo-Clementine literature is apocryphal material that circulated under the name of Saint Clement of Rome, probably starting at the end of the 2nd century. Jung quotes the homilies of pseudo-Clement because they picture a deity not yet split into irreconcilable opposites of good and evil. As Christian doctrine underwent further development, the split became greater, but it had not yet happened in pseudo-Clement. Jung writes, quote, "The unknown author, pseudo-Clement, understands good and evil as the right and left hand of God, and views the whole creation in terms of syzygies, or pairs of opposites. There is no denying that Clement's theology helps us to get over this contradiction, arrived at when the God of Christianity was defined as only good, in a way that fits the psychological facts. It provides a bridge from Christian symbolism to Jungian psychology, which is what Jung is looking for. Jung quotes pseudo-Clement's description of the nature of creation, in which man is a compound of two mixtures, two pastes. Later in paragraph 100, we read from Clement, quote, "These two principles have not their substance outside of God, for there is no other primal source. Nor have they been sent forth from God as animals, for they were of the same mind with him. But from God were sent forth the first four elements, hot and cold, moist and dry. In consequence of this, he is the father of every substance, but not the knowledge which arises from the mixing of the elements. For when these were combined from without, choice was begotten in them as a child." Unquote. Jung only alludes to the idea in pseudo-Clement that in the act of creation God sent forth the four elements, and when they were combined, knowledge and choice were begotten in them as a child. Now the Greek word translated as choice means purpose, and the verb derived from that noun means to have purpose, to decide. So what we are dealing with here is a phenomenon of consciousness. Without distorting the meaning, we could actually translate the Clementine passage to say that when the four elements were combined from without, consciousness was begotten in them as a child. This is a subtle reference to the idea that the Creator God is unconscious, and what he created generates consciousness out of itself. After God's creation, so to speak, and that with consciousness comes choice, comes good and evil. Jung says, "It seems as if, without God's intending it, and possibly without his knowing it, the mixture of the four elements took a wrong turning." Well, it took a wrong turning insofar as it created evil, but it took a right turning insofar as it created consciousness. These two go together. Consciousness generates knowledge of good and evil. Another amplification of the separation of good and evil in the Christian psyche is the vision of the ascension of Isaiah, an apocryphal Christian work of the 2nd century. It uses the figure of Isaiah, the prophet of the Old Testament, but it puts Christian material into his experience. This work has two sections. One describes a magnificent vision of Isaiah's in which he is given a guided tour of the 7 heavens. The other part describes his martyrdom, in which he is sawn in two with a saw like that used to cut down trees. There is a shocking disparity between the two parts, but as is stated in the work, the reason he was martyred was that he had the vision. That gives us an indication of the psychological cost of certain kinds of revelatory experience. Several Christian martyrs experienced the same image of being sawn apart. Such images express symbolically what was happening to the Christian psyche as the church was being established and the dogma laid down. The psyche was being torn into separate parts. Jung refers to the ascension of Isaiah in paragraph 104. In his vision, Isaiah, guided by an angel, goes upward through a series of heavens. The characteristics of the heavens change as he ascends. In the first heaven, praise was going on. In the second heaven, more praise. When Isaiah arrived at the third heaven, nobody had ever heard of the world, though in the lower heavens they were familiar with it and with what was going on there. In the lower heavens, there were angels divided into different groups, right-hand angels and left-hand angels. Higher, there weren't any left-hand angels anymore, just right-hand ones. When Isaiah arrived at the seventh heaven, he liked it so much that he didn't want to go back. This is how Jung also reacted in his experience of almost dying. But the angel told Isaiah, just as Jung was told, "I am sorry, but your days are not yet fulfilled. You must go back." And so Isaiah had to return. But as he did so, he witnessed Christ descending with him. When Christ got down to earth, he went into the womb of the Virgin Mary, where his whole destiny started to unfold. There are a lot of implications in this tale. It is as if Isaiah's trip helped bring Christ down. The same phenomenon took place in the Passion of Perpetua, which was the subject of a companion essay in the German version of Aion. St. Perpetua was martyred, but in the midst of that experience she had a vision of ascending a great ladder, the same theme as that in the story of Isaiah. So far as the vision of Isaiah is concerned, Jung emphasizes that the upper realm and the lower realm were not then completely split apart. There was an interpenetration between them, corresponding to the right and left hands of God, that Clement also speaks about, and only later in the development of the doctrine did the split become total and irrevocable, such as we find in medieval pictures of the Last Judgment. That completes paragraph 104.